Ghost of Tsushima was announced way back in 2017 and was immediately compared to games like Sekiro and Nioh for obvious reasons. However, upon digging deeper, one would discover a striking world which is rich in history and intrigue and brimming with potential for Tom Cruise. This game follows Jin Sakai, who is not Tom Cruise, but rather a samurai who is looked after by his uncle following his father's death. The game begins when not Tom Cruise's uncle is captured during the Mongol invasion of Tsushima, as he sets out on a quest to free his uncle and liberate his people. By the way, Tsushima is a real place and it was actually invaded by the Mongols in the 1300s. So educational much? Not really, because the game lacks Tom Cruise. So instead of the best samurai game of all time, we instead get this samurai guy with 4 different stances and 2 paths to follow. The honorable way of the samurai, or the way of the ghost. Whichever he does is up to you. It doesn't really change that much in the grand scheme of the world and story, however. So, if you'd rather do the sneaky snack or do the honorable standoff is up to you. Feel free to mix and match to your personal preference. However, sometimes you will be forced to do a certain quest in ghostly fashion or forced down the way of the samurai. So don't get too caught up in this. It is an Undertale, you hear? But most of what Ghost of Tsushima does, it does well. Even the lack of Tom Cruise. One thing it does without that I do not entirely agree with is the lack of lock-on though. I think they wanted a more authentic feel for the game and combat. Because we all know when you're in 14th century feudal Japan, there ain't no lock-on, son. Maybe this is something that could have been tied to a certain difficulty setting, I don't know. And while it doesn't reinvent the wheel, it works. That is a sentiment I will be sharing throughout most of this review. Combat is rather focused and deliberate. As you progress through the game, you will unlock a flurry of different items and gear that will give you unique and interesting ways to deal with enemies. Certain enemy types need to be dealt with in very specific ways, however. And that is where the 4 different fighting stances come into play. This is probably the most unique part of Tsushima's combat, to be honest. You need to be able to identify the enemy type you are up against and switch stances on the fly. I know. Sounds like the perfect job for Tom Cruise. Somebody tell SuckerPunch that. When fighting a boss, there is a standoff cutscene that feels like it's straight out of a classic samurai film. The only issue with these is that during the fight, the game enters a different camera view and it kinda makes the section harder to play. It's ultimately a sacrifice that is done for the sake of style, and it's kind of unnecessary. But overall, the game is rather gorgeous, and at times it can even look like a painting. It feels like SuckerPunch really wanted the player to care about this world. And it is a bit refreshing to see this more grounded, realistic take on feudal Japan, as opposed to the more fantastical, mythological settings that the other games have drawn from. I'm not going to waste any more of your time here and just tell you that Ghost of Tsushima is a good game. I clocked in at about 35 hours of playtime and I didn't do everything. Is it the PS4 swan song? That's up to you to decide. Personally, I would hand that title off to The Last of Us Part 2. Ghost of Tsushima is a finely tuned game that really does nothing new, but also nothing wrong. If you're looking for some revolutionary new genre-defining game, you won't find that here. However, if you are interested in an open-world adventure game with light customization and RPG-like elements that is inspired by real-world historical events, give it a go. You won't be disappointed. So you made it to the end of the video, huh? I'm not gonna tell you to like and subscribe like all those other channels do because I actually respect your intelligence. Thank you for watching. Later.